Well, good morning. It is morning, yes. So my name is Miss Andrea, and I'm a veteran homeschool parent. I run a homeschool co-op program, and I also counsel homeschool and public and private school children on getting into college. That's what I do. That is my day job. Um, I love YouTube because I feel like in 20 years that I have been in this homeschool game, I have a lot of information to get out there. And this seems to be a great way to do it. The first 10 or 15 years that I was actually homeschooled, I was blogging. But when YouTube came on the scene, blogging kind of went away and died. Um, my YouTube channel goes back more than 10 years, but I took a long hiatus for numerous reasons, being that I didn't think YouTube was going to go anywhere, but here we are. So, what I want to talk about today is the SAT, the ACT, and college scholarships. This is very important to me. And, you know, if I can't get my nieces and nephews to listen to me on this because I'm right, um, I know I can get the people who pay me to listen to me on this because they pay me for my information. But I just want someone to hear the importance of taking these tests and understand the strategy required that you need to follow to take the SAT and the ACT. So let's talk about why the SAT and the ACT are important. Most people think that the reason that you take these standardized college entry tests is to get into the college of your choice. It's not necessarily true anymore. There are a lot of colleges who have waived these standardized tests under the understanding that some people are just poor test takers and they started to feel like they were missing out on really good candidates um, because they were shying away because they were poor test takers. And so they've waived the SAT and ACT requirement for college entry. A lot of colleges have done this. However, a lot of colleges have not done this. Your Ivy Leagues still want your SAT and your ACT, with the exception of perhaps a world where kids couldn't take the standardized test and they got canceled for fear of germs. This world this past year. But this school year, they started opening those tests back up and finding ways for kids to take those tests. So, once again, the SAT and the ACT are important, not really so much to get into college, except for, like the highest tier colleges, but it's also important for your scholarships. It's important for your scholarships. And you are going to be limited to the scholarships that you can get if you don't take these tests. And the scholarships that most apply to the SAT and ACT would be merit-based scholarships. Okay, so now that you know why it's important, so that you can not only get into college, which may or may not be important for some colleges, but to get money, let's talk about strategy when taking the SAT and the ACT, okay? You need to start early. You don't need permission from your school to take the SAT and the ACT because a lot of students are waiting on their schools to tell them to go take these tests. I had a nephew who, beginning of senior year, called me and said, I need to take the SAT. And I was like, excuse me, you are a senior. You should have taken the SAT 3 times by now. And he was like, oh, well, they just told me to take the ACT. I mean, no, they just told me to take the PSAT. And I was like, why would a senior take the PSAT? And he said, well, they thought I was a junior. So they just skipped over any opportunities that this child had to go and take the proper standardized test to get him in the place he needed to be for college entry. Why did they think he was a junior? Because they front loaded him with useless. Oh, I just knocked my glasses off. This is how passionate I get. They front loaded him with useless classes. And so he did not have enough math and science and English courses to be classified as a senior. But he'd been in the high school 3 years and change. So do not wait for your public, your private, your parent to tell you that it is time to take the SAT or the ACT. Get ye to the College Board website and go ahead and schedule for that test. It's about $100. I mean, sure, your school can give you waivers, but go to them and tell them you want a waiver. That you don't need their permission. You have to be in charge of these tests. I'm tired of young people telling me, well, I didn't take the standardized test or I didn't do X, Y, and Z because of my guidance counselor. I don't care about your guidance counselor. This is your life. This is not your guidance counselor's life. Your guidance counselor is looking at the top 20 to 30 kids in that graduating class. And if you are not in it, you don't count. Seriously. This is why people pay me to be their on the side guidance counselor, because they understand that the guidance counselor is looking at the numbers for the whole school. They're not looking at the individual student. So do not wait for your school to tell you that it is time for you to take a standardized test. You need to be proactive, go online, and start taking those tests yourself. That said, I'm going to talk about this topic kind of straight through for 30 minutes, the SAT, the ACT, and college scholarships. In the meantime, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. And then when I am done discussing this topic in full, then I'm going to go through and answer questions. The reason I'm going to do it that way is because I'm going to try not to look at chat. I'm very distractible, as are many of our children. I'm very attention deficit. And so if I look at the chat, I'm going to lose my train of thought with notes and all, okay? So what was I saying? Don't wait for anyone's permission to take these standardized college entry tests, ever. Go take them. And I want to say, honestly, parents, you can have your middle schoolers take the SAT, just kind of as a how smart is my kid kind of thing. Is my kid in the right place they need to be heading into high school? Because most of the math on those standardized tests, at least half of that math is middle school math anyway. So your child should be able to get a halfway decent score as early as the 8th grade on the SAT in particular. I don't have any experience with the ACT allowing middle schoolers in, but the SAT does it all the time. So when do you take your first SAT test? I think you take your first SAT test in the 9th grade. In the 9th grade. As soon as you're done with algebra. So if you finished algebra in the 8th grade, take the SAT when you are in the 9th grade, period. If the SAT seems scary for a 9th grader, take the PSAT, okay? The PSAT is kind of an SAT light. It's a really good indicator of how you're going to fare when you take the SAT. It is also has scholarships tied to it. So I think it's a disservice to your students to only take the PSAT that one time in the fall of their junior year. And understand, most kids don't see the PSAT until fall of their junior year. They don't see the PSAT, they don't see the SAT, they don't see any ATs, they see nothing until the fall of their junior year, and that is a disservice to the children, especially those poor test takers who are really children with high anxiety. And the way you get rid of the anxiety is through familiarity. Okay, so take those standardized tests as early as humanly possible. The second you're done with algebra, you are ready to start taking standardized tests. Are you going to get a perfect score? Absolutely. There are maths you have not been introduced to, but you're going to know how they're doing based on what they've learned. You're also going to see how they're doing in verbal, because the verbal should be pretty much set by the time they get to high school anyway, or at least you'll know what you have to work on. It's so frustrating to me that kids don't take the SAT till spring of junior year and they're like, oh no, I have to study all summer. You can't cram enough in one summer to get your standardized test scores for college up to where they should be. Okay, so, oh my, I just ate it, my stomach's still growling. So, ninth grade, as soon as you're done with algebra, beginning of ninth grade, end of ninth grade, go in and sign up for the SAT or the PSAT. The PSAT is a little easier. So, okay, if you're scared, do the PSAT. The PSAT is tied to scholarships, the National Merit Scholarship. If you score extremely well on the PSAT, there are probably a dozen colleges, you're done, that will accept you and give you a full scholarship. Game over. Game over. All you have to do now is keep up your grades and not let them fall. Okay? So, in the homeschool world, what we do, well, what some people do in the homeschool world, not me, is they'll have the student take the PSAT. Like whenever you bring your kid in to take the PSAT, it's usually run by a homeschool group. They'll look at how your kid did, and they'll say, set your kid back a year so that they can take the PSAT one more time. I disagree with that. I think we should just be going in much earlier and doing it that way. So what we like to do in homeschool world is we practice. They send us books. You get the books. You practice. You go and you take that test the first time. You get back your test score. You get a readout. It tells you where you're weak and where you're not. So you don't try and study the whole test. You pick the area where you're weakest or where you feel like you can improve the most, and you study that. And you go back and take the test again. You look at your score readout, and you look at what you got right and wrong, and then you go take the test again. If you start the PSAT in the ninth grade, now when you get to the 11th grade, when it is counted toward national merit, now you are going to get a maximum score because A, you've had a chance to improve your weaknesses, and B, my finger distracted me. A, you have a chance to improve your weaknesses, and B, you are now maximizing your score on that PSAT when you get to ninth grade. Now, just because when you get to the 11th grade, now just because the PSAT doesn't count to the 11th grade doesn't mean that you can't also be getting ready for the SAT. Too many schools will tell you, don't worry about it. And if you're lucky, they'll send you to take the PSAT in the 11th grade. And then after that's done and back, maybe in January of junior year, they'll now send you to take the SAT. Y'all, that's too late to be taking your first SAT exam. It's too late. If you don't, one more drink. If you don't take your first SAT exam until halfway through your junior year, you have one summer to study and improve your score. And honestly, if you really want to be in line for merit scholarships, you only have one more chance to take the test. Because, and we'll do another whole live about this, you need to have your college scholarships filled out and submitted by Thanksgiving. Yes, you can send some later. Yes, there are colleges that accept some later. Yes, there are colleges that won't tell you you're accepted until May. But there are so many colleges with rolling admissions where you apply and they tell you right away if you're accepted. And you want to be in that train because those colleges also give out all their scholarship money by the 1st of January. This is why taking the SAT, the ACT early is so important. You want to have a chance to improve your score so that when the colleges see your score, they automatically accept you, they give you merit money, and you're good to go. And then, yeah, you'll have some colleges that you'll be waiting to hear from until May, and that's fine. But that's going to take so much stress off of you. So, for those who missed what I said in the beginning, you want to start your standardized tests early, SAT, ACT. You don't need to wait for the school's permission to do that. You want to take the PSAT and the SAT as early as 9th and 10th grade. That PSAT is a scholarship-based test. If you do well on it, you will get national merit. If you can take it 9th grade and then 10th grade and then the final time in the 11th grade, you have maximized your score. And if you start taking the SAT as early as 9th grade, yeah, you can take it as many times as you want. No one's going to stop you. If you can apply to 20 colleges, which is obscene right now, I try to keep students at council down to 5 because you're wasting money and you're wasting your time. Then you can take the SAT 20 times because it is, you could probably get in 12 to 15 tests between 9th grade and the end of 11th grade. Yeah. So which test should you take and why haven't I mentioned the ACT yet? I haven't mentioned the ACT yet because the SAT and the ACT are completely interchangeable. And we really need to start with the SAT because there isn't a PSAT version of the ACT. But at some point in the 9th grade, well, first of all, start with the SAT because you want your brain to be used to the way the SAT works because it's the same way the PSAT works, and that test is very important. But sometime in the 10th grade, I want you to go and take an ACT. You will have also taken an SAT around the same time and get your scores back and lay them out. On the internet, you will find charts that will say if you scored this on the ACT, this is what you will score on the SAT. If you scored this on the SAT, this is what you will score on the ACT. And so use those conversion charts to see, based on how they compare, which one you scored higher in. Because it's not a matter of how smart you are, it's a matter of how your brain works and how you take tests. Some people do really well on the ACT. Keep in mind that the ACT tests you for middle school math, it tests you for algebra, it tests you for geometry, it tests you for trig. The math is different. The SAT tests you for, once again, middle school math, algebra, algebra 2, and pre-calculus. So, number one, it matters which math classes you have taken in school. And don't take those math classes because those are the math classes for the ACT or those are the math classes for the SAT. Take those math classes because you're successful in that kind of math. If you found out in middle school math that the algebra stuff really lit you up, excuse me, everyone has to take algebra. If you found out in middle school that the geometry stuff really lit you up, then go algebra, geometry, trig in high school. If you found that you just didn't like the geometry type stuff and you really liked the problem solving that happened in algebra, then you want to do um, algebra 1, algebra 2, maybe some geometry, pre-calc. You want to go a different route. So that's the thing. Take both math tests though, because take both standardized tests, the SAT and the ACT, because if you do that in 10th grade, now you're going to also know what math classes you need to be taking in the 11th grade. If you do extremely well on the ACT, you have a more visual spatial brain, and you want to go the route that's going to allow you to take geometry, trig, and maths like that in high school. If you do well on the ACT, you have a more analytical brain, and you're going to want to take maths like algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus in high school. So those are other reasons to get those tests early, because they're going to tell you how you test and they're going to tell you how you process math. And that's going to help you make decisions for your higher maths in high school. So you've taken the SAT and you've taken the ACT, and hopefully you're only in 10th grade, right? So what you're going to do now is you're going to compare those tests and say, and I'll just tell you how my children told me. We did it with my son first, and he was like, the SAT was torture. I much preferred the ACT. And so we dropped the SAT. He took the PSAT because I wanted to see how he would do on national merit, but he didn't take the SAT anymore. I started putting him in the ACT test. I think 3 more times, because at that point, 10th grade. So I scheduled for him to take the ACT 3 more times. My daughter took both tests, and she came home and she said, the ACT was like death to me. It was horrible. It was torturous. I hated it, which surprised me because I thought she was more visual spatial. Regardless, she's like, I'm not taking it anymore. Can't make me. And I was like, I wasn't going to make you, but fine. So we scheduled her to take the SAT, several more times. And we knew by those test scores, not just by how they felt about those tests, but we knew by those test scores how well they were going to be doing in the test route we had chosen. And it paid off. And here's the reason why we take them so many times, at least 3 times a year. The first time you take the SAT or the ACT, you're going to get a base score. You're going to get a starting point, yeah? They've never seen the test before. They're unfamiliar with it. Yeah, you've done some practice tests at home, but the atmosphere of the room, the anxiety, things like that, those are all factors that are going to go into it. So the first time they take that test, they're going to get a score. And it's going to be all right. It's going to be average. Unless your child is super smart, and then it's going to be above average. But there's always room for improvement, right? The second time they take that score, on the SAT, your score is going to go up 100 to 200 points, which is why I get so angry when I run into seniors who haven't taken the test yet, because we've missed that opportunity for that huge jump in school. The score is artificially low, okay? The ACT is, the numbers scheduled differently. It goes up to 36 is your high. So they're gonna jump anywhere from 2 to 5 points. by just taking the test a second time. So whatever you do, don't wait till senior year to take these tests. You have to take them 2 times. That first score is a false score. It's full of nerves and anxiety. Do you know what I mean? That second score is a more truer score as to what your child can do. And then at that point, now we can nitpick and start improving on how our child is going to do in these tests. So, we've talked about why the SAT and ACT are important. We've talked about why you need to start early as ninth grade. Basically, as soon as you're done with algebra, you need to take your first SAT. We've talked about the PSAT, why you need to get into it multiple times. And we talked about which one you should take. Take whichever one your child is going to do the best in. Test them both and then move forward. How many times should I take it? I think I just answered that, but let's go in. 1, 2, 3. I think you have 4 opportunities a year to take the SAT and the ACT. And if you do 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, that's 12. That's 12. I would take it no less than 9 times. I understand there are going to be dates that don't work for you. I would take it no less than 9 times. And the last time that you should take it, the latest time you should take it is that first test in senior year. After that, now you're missing scholarship opportunities and you're missing college admissions deadlines, okay? So 9 times, 12, 13 times. Yeah, and it's $100 each time. And your school will give you maybe 2 or 3 waivers, but you have to go to them. Don't wait for them to come to you. You have to go and say, we're taking it again. Can I have a waiver? We're taking it again. Can I have a waiver? And if they say no, then you need to get somebody else to pay for it. You need to pay for it, get someone else to pay for it. It's important. Invest in this test taking process, and your payoff will be in the college scholarships later. Okay? So, yeah, take the test as many times as you can, because every time you take it, every single time you take it, I already mentioned that first time you take it, you're going to see a big jump, and that's going to be your true score. But every time you take it after that, SAT, you're going to see a 10, 20, 30 point jump depending on what you have studied. SAT, every time you take it, you're going to see a 1 and 2 point jump based on what you studied. Now, when you sign up for College Board or the ACT website to take these tests, sign up that you do not want your scores reported, especially if you're taking them as early as 9th and 10th grade, as I have suggested. You're taking it. You're just taking it to take it. Keep those scores to yourself. What's going to happen is, because you're taking it many times, you're going to get what's called a super score. And they're not going to average your test. They're going to take, especially the ACT. The ACT is going to take your highest score in each area, and that's going to be your high score. And the SAT super score works similarly. So basically, schools are going to be seeing your highest verbal in SAT. They're going to be seeing your highest math in ACT. And ACT, they're going to be seeing your highest verbal, your highest math, your highest reading comprehension, your highest science comprehension. So that super score is the best of each score. I had a parent whose child was severely ADHD, and she followed my instructions, and she went in and took the ACT 6 times. But each time, because the child gets tired and distractible, they put all the energy into one subject. This time we're going in and we're focusing on the math. We're studying for the math. We're only studying for the math going in. We're going to study this math really well. We're going to go in and we're going to take this ACT. And as far as the rest of the test, we'll fill in what we can. We'll read the questions and we'll fill in answers, but we're not going to stress over them. We're going to be more impulsive about answering those questions and just put in whatever answers come in our mind. So they went and they took the ACT the first time. They had studied math really hard. They put their back into it. They put all their stress into that math portion, and the rest of the ACT is a crapshoot, right? And they went in and they scored high in the math section, and they scored average in the rest. The second time they went in having studied verbal. And they were like, I've already gotten a pretty good score in math, so I'm not worried about math, right? So now I'm going to study the verbal. And they went in and they put their back into that verbal section. They studied it. They were asleep over it. And they went in, they took the test. Here's the thing, they were already familiar with the math club, right? So they went and took the test. They answered the math questions best they could. They put a lot of time and energy into the verbal. They answered the science comprehension and other reading comprehension tests that are on the ACT. And then I'm going to answer the questions toward the end, just for anyone who's putting questions and comments, because I get distracted and lose my train of thought. So they came out, they got the test scores back, and they had done really well on verbal. So now they've got that super score from that first test from math. And by the way, they haven't done that bad on math the second time. It just went down a little bit. And now they've got a higher score in verbal. Okay, we're going to do it again. There's a science comprehension part of the ACT. We're going to buckle down and we're going to study the science. Do you see where I'm going? So just by taking it 4 times, they were able to focus on a different section each time. And this is specific to the ACT. The SAT is just 2 parts. So you can, you only have one time you would study math, one time you would study verbal, and you go back and forth. But by the time they were done after 4 tests, they had an amazing score. And then they had a chance to go back in 2 more times and say, you know what? I think I want to try and raise my math score. And by this time, they had taken a harder math. So they had more tools, and they went in. And this child got a full scholarship. ADHD, kind of on the spectrum with an IEP. Do you know what I'm saying? So listen to me, guys. I know how to do this. Take that test often. It shows up, especially when you have anxiety and you think you're a poor test taker. Break it down. Yeah, you have to sit for the whole test, but you don't have to focus on the whole test, right? Right? So there's that. So how does this affect scholarships? There's a thing called the merit scholarship, right? And most private colleges offer them, and some public colleges offer it too. And basically, anyone who comes to us with a 900, a 1200, a 1600, an 1800 SAT, this is how much money they automatically get. So why would we work harder to raise those scores? Same with SAT, ACT. I think the merit scholarships start at 15, 18, 20, 24, 30, 36. And there are tiers. And the higher that score is, the more they get, right? So, yay. Take the test as many times as you can, because at the end of the day, when you hit fall of senior year and you submit those applications, now you go to College Board and say, send my scores, College Board or to the ACT people, and you say, send my scores to these particular schools. You don't just want them sending out your scores before you're ready to send them out to everybody willy-nilly. You want to go in and say, hey, I'm happy with my score. You may now release my score, my super score. Okay. So what if you are a poor test taker? It happens. There are people who do this whole process and still just score average. Scoring average is way better than scoring bad. And chances are you're going to score higher in one area than the other. Um, there's the opportunity to waive the SAT and the ACT from your college applications. Um, but your SAT and ACT are still a really good indicator as to whether you are college ready. In particular, the ACT literally, the readout says college ready for math, college ready for verbal. Do you know what I'm saying? And I've seen children whose parents said, you know what, they're just poor test score takers. We're going to go to college anyway. Failed. They didn't do good. And it's not funny, it's sad because I tell people, um, take it multiple times, and each time they take it, and someone's talking about OCD and anxiety, that anxiety is going to go down every time you take the test. It's a matter of familiarity with the test. Do mock tests at home. Get them familiar with it, get them comfortable with it. And if they still do poor, now you can look and say, you may not be college ready. Let's do junior college first. Let's do an associate's degree first and then transfer up because that's better than them going to Fordham. I went to Fordham, lasted one semester, and had to go back to junior college. I'm not saying this because I know it all. I'm saying this because I have these experiences. Um, and I was in the top 20 in my class. Not everyone is college ready right away. Sometimes you need someone to hold your hand through junior college, and then you can transfer back up and do extremely well. Um, so if you're a poor test taker, take it anyway. Take it as many times as you can. Do practice at home, do drills. That's what your summers are for. Spend your summers doing it. Invest a little bit into those test taking courses also, because they're going to get tips and tricks and their comfort level is just going to get so much better. But at the end of the day, if you just have, it's senior year, it's October, you have a month to get those college applications done and you are just not happy with those tests, choose colleges that don't need the score. But know for yourself what your strengths and weaknesses are and whether you should even be doing a four-year college or if you should be doing a junior college. Also, there are colleges that you can choose that are better for you, and your test scores will reveal that too. If your verbal is extremely high and your math is extremely low, there are colleges called, and I guess this will be another live stream, one other video. There are colleges called Great Books Colleges where you just read and discuss. Um, there are colleges that are suited for you and your personality and even your anxiety level. There are colleges suited for you. So maybe you're not going to Harvard, but maybe you're going to Wesleyan College for Women. Do you know what I'm saying? Which was rated one of the, I can't remember. My daughter went there, but it was rated high regional college, and they had a high grad school entry rate. But it's off the general radar. There are colleges that are off the general radar that are going to be good for you. So please just take all those tests. Do it for me. Do it for me. um, and you'll be so happy in the end. Now, the whole thing with this past year, the stuff that's been going on, the illnesses, tests have been waived. Um, and what has happened is my strong test takers have lost their academic edge because now no one is submitting tests this past year. So there are other things you can also do if the college is giving you the opportunity to waive that standardized test. Um, One of those things you can do is submit your academic resume to your colleges, especially if you're going to a college for the arts. You're going to submit a portfolio, right? If you've acted and you're going to a theater school, you're going to submit your resume. If you're published, because these days are writing for the net, submit your resume, submit that portfolio. If you've had a bunch of really neat jobs, internships, if you've had summer camps that were off the beaten path, unique, or just stringent to get into, submit that resume. And then write one heck of a good personal statement about yourself. And honestly, have 3 of the best essays you've written in your high school career ready to go that you can tweak and change to meet whatever questions that they're going to ask. Um, I had a student just get into 5 schools. They applied late. They didn't come to me until Christmas, and I was like, oh, y'all, it's late. But this is what we did. We submitted a resume, their work history, their internship history, and they write a mean essay. And so we sent a writing portfolio, and they got accepted to those colleges. So if you're a poor test taker, there are ways to get around it, but you have to fight harder for the scholarship money if you don't take those standardized tests. So now I'm going to look at these questions, and if anyone has a question, go ahead and ask it. Is the process different for high schoolers and public private school versus homeschoolers? It is. For the reason that the public school is going to try to tell you when you can take the test. And they're going to have you take it late. Whether you're in private school or whether you're in public school, I want you to, or homeschooling, I want you taking the test the second you finish algebra. If you took algebra in 8th grade, I want you taking the test in 8th grade. Just because they're going to tap you and say it's time for you to take the test doesn't mean you can't tap them a year earlier and say, hey, it's time for me to take the test. And if they say no, you go to mom and dad and say, mom and dad, the school said I can't take the test. And mom and dad just go right on College Board with you and schedule the test. So that's where the process is different. The guidance counselor is focused on the juniors and seniors. And so if you're in public school, you're not going to get those opportunities to take the test more times, which is super, 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 super duper important to take the test many, many, many times, right? How is it different for homeschoolers? Well, we just have the freedom to go in and take the test whenever we want to, but public school teaches toward the test, and homeschoolers more teach following interest. So when you start taking these tests, you might look at the scores and need to go and adjust what's next coming down the pipe that your child needs to learn. You can't say, oh, well, my child did horrible, forget it, we're not going to college. You say, let me get a tutor in this little area, because a homeschooler might have some holes that filling them will fix that score. But overall, between homeschoolers, public schoolers, and private school students, the process is the same, because, and they're all taking the test in the same room, because you schedule for the SAT and the ACT, and then you pick the public or private school closest to you that is allowing an outside students, and they all do. And you go and take those tests alongside those students. That's added level of anxiety for homeschoolers. Yeah, it is. Because those public school students have been in that room already. They know the school, they're not in a different environment. This is their school, they're going to their school, they're going home to take their test. And the homeschool kids are going into a foreign place to take the test. So that's difficult for them, but that's why familiarity and repeated test taking is important, because the second, third time your child walks into that school to take that test, they are going to be more comfortable. My daughter is thinking of taking a gap year. Do you have any tips on what I can do to guide her during that time frame? First of all, stay on that SAT, ACT schedule and get all those tests in. Now you can take tests through the end of senior year, because if she's taking a gap year, well, okay, there are two ways to go at it. One way is, if you know she's taking a gap year, you don't have to apply to college until the next year. So now you have more time to work on skills and to get more tests in. Or, you can do it the traditional linear way and apply as if she was going to college next year. And then when she gets her acceptance letters, you can say, thank you for the acceptance. We're requesting a gap year. Once they accept you, they have to accept your gap year. And that's cool. But I think I like the first option, and I'll tell you why. If you know a gap year is coming down the pike, what you want to do is go ahead and spend that extra year improving skills and maximizing that test score, because you can't take that score after you've graduated. You can't take that test again after you've graduated. So we want to get that done, right? And then we're going to find a seriously unique opportunity for them to do during that gap year. Intern, and not just travel, and not really like the paid mission trips either, unless they're going to a Christian college. In that case, go on one of those paid mission trips, because I took a gap year to do mission work, is what the private Christian colleges want to hear. But say she's applying to Yale. What they're going to want to see is that you went in and you found internship work in your field, and that you've got hands-on experience in your field. Maybe they want to be a veterinarian. Then you want to go to all the vets in your area and say, my child is taking a gap year between high school and college. Can she work here? Can he work here? So if you're going to take a gap year, make sure that that gap year is being spent doing things that's going to inform your child as to whether or not the career they're looking at is the career that they're going to want to stay in. Maybe set up 3 different opportunities, one for the summer after graduation, one for the fall, and then one for the spring, so they can experience different aspects and maybe even different industries, so that when they go into the college, they can align their major towards something that they've experienced now, and it's no longer theoretical. Now, they'll be applying for colleges during the gap year, during the fall of the gap year. So make sure during that summer session and that fall session, they get into industries that are first and second on their list. Okay. Yes, do not waste time during the gap year, because if you take a gap year and you do nothing academic or educational, you're going to lose your edge. You're literally going to have brain drain. You don't want brain drain between senior year of high school and college. You don't want to do poorly in college because of brain drain. Okay, so Do not let that happen to you. Do not let that happen to you. So we have 10 minutes left. So if anyone else has any questions on the SAT, the ACT, college scholarships, college entry, anything like that, I am glad to answer them. So let's do a quick story about my daughter's journey through this process. She's 24 now, and she's about to leave for a fellowship in the costume industry. She got a full scholarship for theater. But let's go back to our first foray into the standardized test taking. I believe I sent her in for the SAT and the ACT in 10th grade. Her brother was in 11th grade and they went in together. And they came back, after both tests, they both took both tests together, and they both came back and told me that they both hated the other test. She loved one, he loved the other. And then the test scores confirmed that she was a strong SAT taker and he was a strong ACT taker. So then we went in and we took the PSAT, and they did fair. He didn't do that great because he's an ACT person. She did fair. So sometimes it happens for you, sometimes it doesn't. Her math was just too average. Okay, so for her, we just kept taking it, and her math stayed average. It stayed average. Her verbal maxed out. She was 10 points short of the highest verbal score possible on the SAT. And that's normal. It's normally indicative of a gifted brain. Her gifting is in all things verbal. She's a self-taught historian, which is why costuming works so well, because you've got to do the dramaturgy, which is be a historian for theater, to go into that field. And so while she had, my goodness, it was a really average score, a 490 in math, she had a 790 in verbal. And the colleges looked at that and they were like, scholarship. Yeah, we'll keep her in the arts because she can't do the sciences with this score, but scholarship. So you don't have to be a genius at everything. You just have to be really good in one area for colleges to look at your score and give you a scholarship. And because her overall score was good, that also got her merit scholarships. So she just got scholarships across the board. So don't worry about your weaknesses. Build on your strengths, Is it harder for a homeschooled high schooler to get into college? No. These days, because I counsel both high school students and I counsel both public school students and I counsel both homeschool students, I find that it's actually easier for a homeschool student to get into college because there's not an outside third person running the show. They don't have that public school guidance counselor who's really only focused on the top 10, 20% of the school that they can see. Because there are kids who are just as smart who are just lost in the shuffle. Okay? So gosh, in my experience, it's just easier to get a homeschool student um, into college. Because you, the parent, are in control, but you do have to follow the steps. You have to make sure, starting 8th grade, that they're getting the right curriculum. It's not that it's harder for homeschoolers to get into college, it's that it's harder for homeschoolers who aren't process oriented to get into college. So if you can take a process oriented approach to high school, and I'll talk about that. I will absolutely talk about that. And I have talked about that. Matter of fact, when I go back in to update this video and make it permanent, in the comments, I will list all the links you can go back and watch about processes you need to do to make this job easier. I worry about homeschoolers getting into college and not getting looked down on. My daughter is a senior in college now, and her roommate was homeschooled. She said she got in just fine, but small school. Yeah. Nobody has to know that you're homeschooled, y'all. Nobody has to know, number one, because who's going to look down on you? The professors? The students? None of their business. The only people that need to know that you're homeschooled is administration and admissions, period. Now, my daughter, my kids were homeschooled, and my daughter went to a small women's college, and homeschoolers tend to find each other. And some of her homeschooled friends did not do well, and some of those homeschool friends were looked down on. And unfortunately, the reason is because they didn't have the academic background and needed to hang out. There was one girl who dropped out because she had no science background. She used a popular homeschool curriculum. Don't get me wrong. They tried, but it was based on a young earth Christian theory. And so she didn't have the academics she needed to do well in this liberal arts college. If that's the curriculum you're going to take, then there are colleges for you. There are private Christian colleges who follow the same theory. So you kind of have to, if you're not going to teach mainstream science, if you're not going to teach mainstream history, if you're not going to teach mainstream subjects, and you're going to stick tightly to the homeschool, the accepted Christian homeschool curriculum, then you need to go to a homeschool friendly Christian college. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens of them. My son started in one and left because he said for a Christian college, those people were awfully mean to each other. Different story altogether. Okay. What's the best way to get in touch with you if family needs your help for college counseling? I don't know why people have trouble finding this, but every YouTuber has an about page. So if you go to our profile, you'll see the about page, the about tab. And if you click in it, then you scroll down and you can click a box to get our email. YouTube doesn't like us just giving out our email because it causes people to spam us. If you can't find the about page, just leave a comment in my comment section after this is published, and I will get in touch with you, and we will find a way. We will find a way. Yes, I have shared my tongue goes wild after a while. I have shared sample transcripts. I will link the videos to that. And yes, letter grades. Letter grades are the transcripts. And I'll do another whole updated video because now I'm just better at making videos. And so I can give you a better video on transcripts, and maybe even give you access to a Google Doc that I've made in the past that would help you with that. So my hour is done. Any last questions at all? I'm glad to answer them. Once again, my background is I started homeschooling my babies in 2003 after several years of realizing that one of my children was gifted and the other one was talented, and neither of those worked in a traditional school setting. By the time I pulled them out, my children, I was dealing with depression in children that were under age 10. Like I was dealing with depression in children that came to my elbow. And my viewership just jumped tremendously. Should I stay on 10 more minutes? If you think I should stay on 10 more minutes, even though I was about to sign off, go ahead and give me a thumbs up or ask a question. And so I started homeschooling all those years ago, and I started writing. I started blogging, and I just went back and I just updated my homeschool vlog. It's nafm.blogspot.org. .blogspot.com. So if anybody wants to check out my homeschool blog that's over a decade years old, go and check it out. You'll see my journey. Things I thought in the early years are not what I think now. And that's, oh, thank you so much, Rita. Things I thought then, I don't think now. And that's why I caution homeschoolers from getting together with same age, same level experience other homeschoolers and making decisions that way. You need some old heads who have seen the entire journey in your advice group. Please, please vary your advice group. People who don't look like you, people who aren't your age, people with children different ages. People, just look for homeschoolers who have kids in college, y'all. We are so kind. We will just take your hand. And if you're in public school, because my mission has kind of changed lately to help public school parents also. It happened during, the virus year. Public school parents have come to me because they said, we've lost our edge because the ACT and SAT got waived this year. And while my child is a strong test taker, they weren't able to take the test. What do we do? And that's when I started helping the students to write resumes and to put the best foot forward, send in little packages of themselves along, just say, fill out the application and say, hey, I'm sending you additional materials, and just send those additional materials into the colleges. So my advice from henceforth is not just for homeschoolers. My advice is for everybody, because there are things that I know from the public school world that will help homeschoolers tremendously, and there are things that I know from the homeschool world that will help traditional students tremendously. And it's time for us to stop being divisive. If this last year has shown us nothing, it's that there, for the grace of God, go I. We can all be in each other's same shoes at any moment. Okay, question. If you're going to homeschool your kids through high school, should you have courses planned out by 9th grade? Loosely. And I have a document, not a document that I would share. You need to have an idea what direction you're going to go in. But you can say, okay, 9th grade, we're going to take algebra. 10th grade, based on how algebra goes, we're going to take geometry or algebra 2. Or you could have 10 sciences to choose from over the years based on, because you're going to find out things about your child. You're going to find out they really gravitate to biology. Biology is a no-brainer for them. So we need to stay in the physical sciences, or these numbers really feed them. We need to stay in the chemical sciences. So you have to have a good idea, but you also have to have options. Oh, you couldn't find ACT in your area? ACT.org. You should just be able to sign up, log in, put in your information, and then your zip code. As far as I know, it's available all over the US. Are you in an obscure area? And can you travel? ACT.org. Go to ACT.org. Go to the horse. And hey, go stay with a relative for an ACT weekend. You don't have to take it in your state. Yeah, awesome. So, I've done my whole talk. We're at 1 hour and 6 minutes, and then now my viewership perked up, which is hysterical. So I'm just gonna give a quick summary of everything that I said. And if anyone has any questions about the ACT, the SAT, and college scholarships, please be sure to ask in the comment sections. When I'm done giving the recap, then I'll answer questions again. Okay, so the SAT and the ACT are important, not just for getting into college, which is what everyone thinks, but for getting college scholarships. There are a lot of colleges that now waive the SAT and ACT. You don't have to take them, but you also don't have to get scholarships. You know what I mean? So if you need college money, you want to take the SAT and the ACT, and you want to start early. In public school, they're going to tap your kid probably in the beginning of junior year and say, time to take the PSAT. No warning, no practice, no nothing. They throw them in a room. If they do good, great. If they don't, oh well. No. Don't let them do that. You go to them and say, hey, my kid's in the 9th grade and my kid's already taken algebra. So what we're going to do is we're going to go take a PSAT now, and you are going to help me do that. Oh, you're not going to help me do that? No problem. I'm going to call around to homeschool circles and get my kid in the PSAT test. Public school parents, if the public schools won't help you, get some homeschool friends and go take the day off of school, because it's going to be on a Wednesday, and go take the test with the homeschool students, okay? So as soon as your child is done taking algebra, you are ready for the SAT. Are you going to get a max score with just algebra under your belt? No, but you're going to find out what your strengths and weaknesses are. You're going to get familiar with the test, which is going to lower your test-taking anxiety. Every time you take that test, you're going to have less anxiety. You understand? So, so I want to see students taking the PSAT in 9th grade and 10th grade and no later. Now, the PSAT doesn't count until the 11th grade. That is when they look at your score and decide if you are a National Merit Scholar. If you are a National Merit Scholar, chances are you're going to go to college for free, or you're going to have no trouble getting into Harvard. There's going to be a handful of colleges that automatically give National Merit Scholars a full scholarship. And then there are going to be your Ivy Leagues, which just want them. And you should just be happy for being here. How many times you should take the test? As many as humanly possible. As many as humanly possible. The test is given out 4 times a year. If you take it for 3 years, that's 12. Okay, if there's that conflict, I don't want to see anyone taking the SAT or the ACT any less than 9 times. That first time you take the test, your score is automatically going to jump. SAT, a couple hundred points. ACT is based on a scale of 36. It's going to jump 2 to 3, 4 points. That second test is going to be your natural score. That first test is going to be your intro practice score. Anyone who takes it less than twice, don't speak to me anymore. We're done. We can't be friends. You didn't listen. You've done yourself a disservice. So you want to take that test a dozen times if you can. Now, what are you doing between the tests? You study, right? You get the test back. You look at where you're weak. You look at where you were strong. You study. Maybe you haven't done that math yet. So, you get on Khan Academy, you start practicing, and you're ready when you take that math test. You strengthen your verbal. It's going to give you information that you need. You hire a tutor. You do what you have to do. These are the years where you invest. The more you invest now in high school towards taking that test multiple times and studying, getting help in between, the less you're going to have to pay for in college. So this is what we want to do. We want to do this, okay? Yeah. So yeah, take it as many times. Now, which one do you take? Which one do you take? Do I take the SAT? Do I take the ACT? Take them both once around the same time. Take them back to back. And then, so what's going to happen is the kid's going to come home and they're going to go, "Ooh, I much prefer one test over the other," or "I hate that test so much." And their test scores are going to, there's never going to be a time where the kids are going to say the SAT felt like death, and then they're going to do better on the SAT than the ACT. Normally, they'll know, and then the test scores will tell you that your child's brain is wired for the way this test is run. And so now you're not going to take that other test anymore, and you're just going to focus on this test. So that's what you need to know. And so you want it to be done with this whole thing by fall of senior year, by October, because that first round of college applications needs to get mailed Thanksgiving weekend. I call all my kids Thanksgiving. Nobody wants to speak to me. I'm not calling to say happy Thanksgiving. My nieces, nephews, nobody. I'm calling to say, are your college applications done? Let's get them done. What's not done yet? Essay, let's sit down. Like Thanksgiving dinner, I've got a high school senior in the corner without fail, with notebook and paper, and we're writing essays. I'm not playing with people. You know what I'm saying? That it's important to have all your college applications to colleges with a rolling admission done by Thanksgiving. Rolling admission colleges look at your application and decide on the spot if you're accepted or not. And so by Christmas, mid-January, you have a pile of acceptance letters. It may not include Yale, Harvard, some of the bigger Ivy Leagues, but now you know that at bare minimum, I'm going here. And oh, by the way, these colleges are done giving out money by January 15th-ish. And so you want to be in line for that money. You might be waiting on Harvard, but you might also know that, I don't know, Temple University is offering you a full scholarship. Should you not get into Harvard? Is that going to lower your stress, or is that going to lower your stress? Do you know what I mean? So this is why it's important. And if you are a poor test taker, still, after taking the test a dozen times and studying in between and improving your skills, if you're still a poor test taker, then you need to create a portfolio, a resume of sorts to send to the college in addition. Because there are a lot of colleges that don't require you to submit the SAT and the ACT, but a lot of those scholarships are contingent still upon a lot of those scholarships are still contingent upon your success on the SAT and the ACT. So thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to my talk. I'd love to do a TED Talk. Wouldn't that be fun? Anyway, that is all. I appreciate you guys. If you came in late, this live chat will be published with all the links to all the important things that I've said in full. So take a listen to it, especially if you have a child in the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. So until next time.